Alright guys, so if you're adding the factory inverter, there's two alpha OBD settings that we're going to want to update, and they are in the body computer. So once you're connected to alpha OBD, you're going to want to then connect to your body computer. So for me it's a 19 Classic. Hit connect. Once you're connected up to the body computer, click on the car with the hood up, and then for procedure to start, we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and at the bottom we will see car configuration change. We're going to click on that and then select the option. The good thing about this is there's a search bar, so if you click on the search bar and I just type in inverter, alright, I get three options that come up. So there's power inverter type, inverter status input present, and inverter power switch input present. We don't care about the status. The other two settings are what we're going to want to change. So for the switch, we're going to want to change that to yes, it is present. Start it, let that finish, and then we're going to go back and we're going to look at the power inverter type. We're going to click on that one, and for the value we want to pick latching switch. So you see latching switch, hit start, let that one finish, and that's it. That's the only two settings. Once you have the wiring all set and everything installed, you should be good to go. Alright, so I'm just doing an installation video on the 3-piece harness that I built to add the factory inverter. If your Ram truck did not come with it. So this is the outlet right here. A lot of people think you can add that and there's already a connector under there, you're all set. That's not the case. You're going to need all this additional wiring as well as the factory inverter that goes under the passenger seat. So the first step in the process is we're going to run the largest harness here. One end you're going to see two terminals, male, female. This is the power and ground wire. We need to run this from the driver's side over to the passenger side. So you see over there I have a coat hanger that I kind of used to help me run stuff through under the dash here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape this to the end of the coat hanger and I'm gonna feed it through, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so I got the harness taped up. You can see it here. I kind of ran it through underneath over here, and take your time with it because it can be a pain in the ass to do. Well, now that I have that, actually, let me just make sure I got some slack on this for when I start pulling it through. Okay. So now, if I come over to the passenger side, I had to remove, so there's this panel here underneath the glove box. I took that out and then just moved the carpet, and you can see here's the end of the coat hanger. So I'm just gonna work my way, pull it through, and here it is. Okay, so now what we're gonna want to do is just untape this, and then the next step, we're gonna want to disconnect the battery before we do anything else, because we're gonna have to disconnect some connectors. Alright, so for the next step we want to disconnect the negative battery terminal. So that's just a 10mm socket. Pop that off. I like to put something in between to make sure it doesn't make contact with the post, you know, while I'm working on it. But once we have that disconnected, we can then unbolt the passenger seat. So I believe it is, so it's a 15mm, two in the front. You can see here on the front, and then the back is two 18mm. So there's two 18mm for the back, and once you have those unbolted, you have your yellow connector underneath here. So we have to disconnect that. You want to make sure you don't pull in the wiring. It's pretty difficult to disconnect. There's a little push tab here, and then you gotta kind of separate them. Just be very careful. They don't really like to come apart very easily. But once we have that apart, we're going to take the wiring that we just fed through and we're going to attach it to the cab side yellow connector. So what I like to do is pull enough slack through where we can kind of route the wiring over to the side and then down, and then under the carpet and have it pop up right out here. So that's what we're going to do next, and then I'll show you how to unlock this connector and pin that wiring. All right, so I fed the wiring through. We got the 2 terminals here, and sorry, I still got some tape on this. These are not labeled because this is for demonstration purposes, but I'm going to have every wire labeled. This is the yellow connector, so it's going to, the labeling will be Y and whatever number terminal that it fits into. And if you look at the connector, it's very hard to see, but they are labeled on the back side. And then you can see these 2 are the larger terminals. So there's, if you look at this connector, the 4 in the middle here, those will go for the large terminals. That's where you're going to be pinning these ones too. But I can provide diagrams for this to help you do that as well. But the first thing you have to do is unlock this connector to be able to pin the wiring to it. And to do that, if you flip it over here, you can see this little white piece. This actually has to get lifted up in order to unlock the connector. And if you look on the side away from the wiring, there's 3 little spots here where you can kind of slip something underneath and pry up on the white. And that's typically what I do with, like, I have a little pick here. I just try to get underneath it and pop it up. And like I said, you're going to want something really, really thin to do it. Sometimes if my pick's a little bit too big, I have a little pocket knife where the top of the blade is a little smaller, and I can get it in there a little bit easier. Not the best solution, but it works. So there you go. I just popped this white piece up. Hopefully you can see it on camera. Now I should be able to just come in and pin my wiring. And the wiring only goes in one direction, so if you have any issues with it, just flip it, 180 degrees and try the other way. And it should click when it goes into place. So you pin this to wiring, and then don't forget to relock this connector. While we're here, we can actually also wire in the other half of this connector, the seat half. My other harness, we could come in and wire that in as well. So let me grab that. So that is this harness with this connector. This is the connector that's going to connect into the inverter, and the other end, it's all male terminals, and they're all going to connect into here. You can see, if you look in here, those are all male terminals. So it's pretty much the exact same thing. If you look on the back side, it's got this little white piece. There's 2 little spots where you can try to kind of get underneath it. Actually, you can do it from the back side pretty good. So I kind of got one. And then kind of just work your way across it. Make sure you have it lifted up all the way across. So there you go. I have that whole thing lifted up now. Hopefully you can see that on camera. It's raised up. So now, again, this will all be labeled yellow and whatever position number that it goes in. We're going to take all 5 of these and pin them in here. And then you can kind of just, whatever, zip tie this to this existing harness. But basically, the inverter, and I have mine because I swapped out my seat, so I have mine factory installed. The inverter is right here. So you're going to need this bracket. There's 4 bolts that bolt the bracket on, and then there's 4 bolts that bolt the actual inverter onto the bracket. I don't have the part numbers for the bolts, but I can get you the part numbers for the inverter and for the bracket. And then, like I said, this connects right into the back of it. Mine has the factory one now, so it's already in there. And that's how this will be set up. So once we have this done, while we're over here, the next thing we're going to run the final harness, which is going to, I'll show you in just a second. All right, so this is the final harness. It's just 3 wires. What we're going to end up doing is we need to also run this to the yellow connector, and then it's going to run to a connector under the dash over here. So what I did while I was running the power and ground wire is I removed this kick panel. It pops right up. Basically, you can see it pops up here, 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 and then you can kind of pull it away from the sides here. The connector, so mine's a 1500. It's going to be this white connector here that we need to pin into. So we're going to pin into the bottom half here, and we're going to run the wiring through the carpet up into here and pin into here. For 2500, I believe this is it's a different connector. It's a black connector, but on the 1500s, as far as I know, it's a white connector. So that's what we're going to do next. I'll show you how to disconnect this one, unlock it, pin to it, and then run that wiring. All right, hopefully you can see this. So the connector is here. There's actually 2 separate push pins on the back side of this, so I recommend using a trim tool to pry this whole connector off. So when it's connected, let me reconnect it for you just to show you. So when it's connected, pop it, the push pins from the back side. There's a little tab you want to push on, and then this lever pulls down, and then you should be able to separate the two. So here you go, you have it here. We're gonna pin into the male side of this connector, which is here. This one's a lot easier. It has these little tabs on the sides here where you can just get your finger, kind of pull it out and push it on both sides, pull it out and push it up, and you'll see inside here this white piece lifts right up. You can pop it right out if you want to. When you're done, you kind of just drop it back in. Just make sure you drop it back in the correct way. I think I had it backwards right there, so I think it pops back in like this. Once you have it disconnected, again, very simple. You can pin into here. Again, they're numbered, very hard to see. I can give you a diagram for that as well. They'll click into place. Once you're done, lock it back up, put everything back together, and then you're going to have your other half of the run, which we are going to want to then run to. So here's the male terminals that we're going to pin in here, and then the other end is female terminals. And again, these will be labeled. So this, for me, it's a white connector, so it'll be W and whatever position number is. If it's 2500, I'm gonna make, I believe it's a black connector, so it'll be B, whatever number it is. And then again, since these are going to go into the yellow connector under the seat, it'll be Y and whatever position number it is. So same exact process. Bring this over to that connector, how I just showed, pin those in, and that's the majority of the wiring. All we have left to do at this point would be the power and ground wire. All right, so we're back over on the driver's side, and the beginning, the wiring that we fished through, this is the other end of that wiring. So there's a ground, and same process. There's a little kick panel here that you can pop this whole piece right out. Behind here is a ground spot, ground location. We're just going to unbolt it and ground this right to it. Bolt it back up with this in place, kind of tuck all the wiring under the carpet out of the way, and then all we have left is the power, and we need to connect this to the factory location under the fuse box. So in order to do this, we have to run this wire through the firewall. So I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to get a good view. It's a little dark in here, but there's a rubber boot where all the wiring comes through. Let me show you from the other side, the engine bay side. But basically, we have to fish that wiring through. So here you go. That's the rubber boot there. I've got a few things I fished through. The other thing people do is right next to it here, this plastic. It's a clutch plate. So obviously, this is an automatic. There's no clutch. A lot of people like to drill a hole through that and run wiring through. You can do that if you want. Put a little grommet in there and run it through. But basically, what we're going to want to do is fish the power wire through the firewall. So what I recommend doing is using that coat hanger, push the coat hanger through from here into the engine, the cab side, excuse me. Once it's in there, tape the wiring to it, pull it back through. So once we have that through, I'll show you how to pin that wiring to the fuse box. All right, so final step is just to run the power wiring. So you run it through the firewall, kind of tuck it down behind the battery. We want to get under this battery box. I find it easier to, if you open this up, there's a little bolt right here. That is a 13 millimeter. If we get that off, it'll give us a little bit more space to move this box around. So I'm just going to pop that off right now. Alright, so that's off. Disconnect this cable here, and I like to kind of just pop that back on just so I don't lose it. Turn it a few times so it doesn't pop off. But now what we need to do is get under this fuse box. And there's 4 tabs. Hopefully you can see on the camera. There's 2 tabs in the front, 2 tabs in the back. If you push them in and pull up on the box, it'll pop up a little bit. We want to do that on all 4 corners. And now I can get the box up. So now that I have the box up, this connector here, and if I'm looking at the fuse box, it's the front left of the fuse box. This is the one we want to pin the wiring to. So same thing, there's a little button with a tab on the ends over here. So you want to push the button and then pull the lever down, and it pops right out. So now that we have this out, hopefully you can see, same thing, there is this white piece here. This needs to lift up in order to unlock this connector. So what I find the easiest thing to do is, if you look on the side here, you can see the white. I like to stick something in there and kind of push up on it a little bit. And then again, there's like some spots on the side of it that you can get something underneath. And like I said, this thing's slowly coming up, and kind of just work your way across the connector. So I have it up right now. You can, as long as it's up, it's disconnected. You can completely pop it out if you want. I do that, you know, typically. I can pop the whole thing right out. There it is. And now I know for a fact that this thing's unlocked. And then what I like to do, just to get this little lever out of the way, kind of push it back down. And then we're going to work on the back side here. Now that this is unlocked, same thing as all the other cases. All these spots are numbered. You got to look carefully at them. But we're going to pin to position 38. So we find 38, and we're going to just drop the connector right in. It should lock. You hear it click. It locks in place. Once that's done, you're all set. We'll just put everything back together. Right? Put the little white piece back on. Make sure you push it all the way down. Make sure you put it on correctly. Because I pushed this lever down, we're going to want to move this lever back out again. So I'll pull the lever back out again, lift up the fuse box. This guy slides right into place. Drop the lever down, make sure that's all locked up good. Take the fuse box, kind of drop the fuse box into place, and then we're going to want to reconnect this battery cable. So we drop that back on and reconnect that, and then that's pretty much it for the install. Once we have this button back up, the last thing to do, just make sure you have everything else back together. Make sure the passenger seat's all back together. Don't forget to reconnect all the connectors. Once that's all back together and you're sure everything's back together, then you can reconnect the battery.